This is the story of Burkina Faso, a strong and proud country in West Africa. It is a land of hardworking people, rich culture, and a deep desire for peace and progress. But over the years, Burkina Faso has faced many challenges. There have been problems with security, poverty, and leadership. Armed groups have brought fear and pain to many communities. People have cried out for safety, justice, and change. Before now, many leaders came and went, but the problems remained. Life was hard for ordinary people, and trust in government grew weak. Then in 2022, something new happened.
Je jure devant le peuple
I swear
burkinabé,
before the people of Burkina
sur mon
Faso
honneur,
and on my honor
de
to
préserver,
preserve,
de
respect,
respecter,
uphold,
de faire
and defend the
respecter
Constitution,
et de
the
défendre
Charter
la
of Transition,
Constitution,
and the laws,
la charte de la
to make
transition
every effort to guarantee justice
et des lois.
to all inhabitants
Tout
of
mettre en
Burkina
œuvre
Faso.
pour garantir la justice à tous les habitants du Burkina Faso.
A young soldier named Captain IBRAHIM Traore came to power through a military takeover. He said he wanted to save the country and give it back to the people. Some see him as a hero. Others are still watching closely, wondering what his leadership will bring. In this documentary, we will take a closer look at how Burkina Faso has changed. From the difficult days before Captain Traore to the new direction the country is taking under his leadership. This is not just a story about one man. It is about a nation standing at a crossroad, deciding which path to take. This is Burkina Faso before Traore, and now with Traore. Before the name Burkina Faso was ever spoken on the world stage, the land was home to ancient civilizations, organized societies with rich cultures, spiritual depth, and strong standing systems of government. Pre-colonial Burkina Faso was deeply connected to broader West African trade networks, exchanging gold, salt, livestock, clothes, and kola nut with neighboring communities and regions, including the Mali and Songhai empires and the Akan states of present-day Ghana. This was a land of order, spirituality, and resilience long before European contact. Then fast forward to the 19th century. In the 19th century, the winds of foreign ambition swept across West Africa as European power raced to divide the continent during the scramble for Africa. France turned its eyes to the region we now call Burkina Faso. At the time, the heart of the region was ruled by Mosi kingdoms under the authority of the Moronaba, the supreme king. The Mosi had ruled for centuries. Their armies were skilled, their leadership centralized, and their spirits unyielding. But in 1896, the balance shifted. French colonial expansion had already claimed neighboring regions, Senegal, Niger, and Côte d'Ivoire. Now, the French military under Captain Paul Vaulet and Lieutenant Julien marched forward with a clear mission to subdue the Mosi and secure the territory for France. That same year, Captain Vaulet led a mission that clashed with Mosi resistance. Though the Mosi warriors fought bravely, they were outgunned and outnumbered. Traditional spears and arrows stood little chance against European rifles and cannons. Despite the valiant defense, France won in 1896, and with that, Mosi political independence fell. But France did not stop there. Over the next few years, it moved steadily across the region, defeating other powerful kingdoms, either through military campaigns or political pressure. In some parts of Africa, local leaders signed agreements with the Europeans, but in Burkina Faso, the Mosi kings never did. Instead, the French used force to take control of their land. Still, the people didn't give up. They continued to fight back through surprise attacks and quiet forms of resistance, even into the early 1900s. However, by 1904, French control over the region was solidified. The French might have claimed the land, but they never truly owned the heart of the people. Throughout the colonial period, Burkina leaders, workers, students, and farmers resisted oppression quietly or openly until the winds of independence finally arrived. The idea of freedom started growing in Africa after many men were sent to fight in World War II. They risked their lives in battle far from home, and when they came back, they started asking questions. Why are we good enough to fight in wars, but not good enough to choose our own leaders? At the same time, more young people were going to school. Some studied in cities, others in Europe. They learned about democracy, justice, and human rights. They began to speak up. They wrote in newspapers, formed groups, and taught others to believe in themselves. And in 1957, Ghana gained independence from Britain. This served as a big motivation to many other African countries. After World War II, France came under pressure to give more insights to its African colonies. People in Upper Volta began organizing. Political parties were formed, and elections started to take place. One of the most important leaders of this time was Maurice Yameogo. He came from a farming background but became active in politics. He joined the party that pushed for self-rule and in time he became the leader of the country's independence movement. Another early leader was Daniel Coulibaly, who spoke out for African unity and helped shape the political scene. Many others like Joseph Konombo and Nazi Boni also played roles in building a voice for freedom. People across Upper Volta started calling for their own government. They wanted schools, hospitals and jobs to be run by locals, not by French officials. Young people and workers began organizing protests and joining movements. France, facing pressure from inside Africa and the international community, began to change its policies. Slowly, it allowed more African voices into leadership. Finally, on August 5, 1960, Upper Volta became an independent country. Maurice Yamego became the first president. The people celebrated in the streets. After years of being controlled by foreigners, they now choose their own path. But the fight for freedom didn't end there. In many years that followed, leaders like Thomas Sankara would rise to push for true independence, not just from France, but from poverty, injustice and corruption. After Upper Volta became independent from France in 1960, its first president was Maurice Yamego. He had worked as a civil servant and was active in politics even before independence. He was a strong speaker and a key figure in the independence movement, leading the Volcanic Democratic Union. At first, many people had hope in Yamego. He promised to build a strong, modern country. He kept close ties with France and other former colonies. He also believed in African unity and supported the idea of West African countries working together. But over time, things started to go wrong. His rule became too controlling. He banned opposition parties, turning the country into one-party state. He limited freedom of speech and shut down criticism. His government became known for corruption and favoritism. Meanwhile, ordinary people were suffering. The economy was weak and many people were hungry. In 1965, Yamego was re-elected without any real competition. But just a few months later, in early 1966, he made a very unpopular move. He cut salaries of civil servants, teachers and workers because the government was low on money. This decision caused a huge nationwide protest. Workers, students and even the army joined in. People marched in the streets calling for him to step down. Finally, on January 3, 1966, the army led by Lieutenant Colonel Lamizana forced Yamego to resign. After Maurice Yamego was removed from power in January 1966, the country was in crisis. People were angry, the economy was in bad shape, and trust in politicians was low. At first, Lamizana ruled as a military leader. He dissolved parliament and took full control to restore peace and order. But unlike some military rulers, he didn't hold on to power by force alone. In 1970, he allowed a new constitution and started moving towards civilian rule. A few years later, in 1978, he ran for president in an election and won, becoming a civilian president, not just a military ruler. During his time in power, Lamizana focused on trying to fix the economy, which was suffering from drought and poverty, dealing with clashes between modern politics and traditional chiefs, working with unions and civil society to avoid unrest, keeping the country relatively stable compared to other African nations at the time. However, his government faced serious problems. There were frequent food shortages due to major drought in the 1970s, especially the Sahel droughts. The economy remained weak. People grew tired of slow progress and poor living conditions. By 1980, the pressure became too much. The people were frustrated again, just like in 1966. On November 25, 1980, Lamizana was overthrown in a bloodless coup by Colonel Saye Zebo, another military officer. Lamizana quietly stepped down and did not resist. Zebo took power on November 25, 1980. Zebo was a colonel in the army and had also worked as a foreign minister. After taking power, he cancelled the constitution and formed a new military government called the Military Committee for Recovery and National Progress. At first, many people supported him, including unions and traditional leaders. But soon, people became unhappy with his rule. Zebo banned political parties, stopped workers from striking, and froze the salaries of government workers. He said these steps were necessary to fix the country's problems. However, things did not get better, and many saw him as too strict and unwilling to listen. Zebo brought in younger military officers to help run the country, including Thomas Sankara, Blaise Compaoré, and Henry Zongo. These men later became very important in Burkina Faso's future, but they also became unhappy with Zebo. In April 1982, Sankara resigned from his position, accusing the government of not helping the people. As more people began to protest and unions turned against him, Zebo's control started to weaken. On November 7, 1982, some younger army officer carried out a coup and removed him from power. There was some fighting in the capital city, but the new group took over. They chose Major General Jean-Baptiste Ouedraogo as the new head of the country and formed a new government called the Council of Popular Salvation. After he was removed, Zebo was put in prison. In 1984, he was sentenced to 15 years, although part of his sentence was reduced. While in prison, Zebo had a big personal change. He converted from Islam to Christianity. He was released in 1985, and years later in 1997, the country's Supreme Court cancelled his sentence, meaning he was no longer considered guilty. Ouedraogo was a military doctor, not a traditional politician. He was seen as someone who could keep peace between the different groups in the army. Some officers wanted fast changes and revolution, while others preferred a slower, more careful approach. Jean-Baptiste tried to be in the middle, but this was not easy. During his time as president, he made Thomas Sankara the prime minister. Sankara was popular with the people, especially the youth and the poor. But Sankara had strong ideas about changing the country quickly, fighting corruption, and standing up to foreign powers. Many in the military and government thought Sankara was too bold. Soon, there was tension between Ouedraogo and Sankara. In May 1983, Ouedraogo had Sankara arrested, hoping to stop the growing support around him. But this made many people angry, especially other young officers and students. The situation became worse. On August 4, 1983, Captain Blaise Compaoré, a friend of Sankara, led a coup to remove Ouedraogo. Sankara was freed from prison and became the new leader of the country. Ouedraogo's time as president lasted only about 9 months. After he was removed, he stepped away from politics and returned to working as a doctor. On August 4, 1983, Captain Thomas Sankara became the new leader of Upper Volta. He was just 33 years old and full of bold ideas. One of the first things he did was change the name of the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, which means land of honest people. Sankara was different from the leaders before him. He believed strongly in justice, equality, and independence. He wanted to fight poverty, stop corruption, and make the country truly free, not just from colonial rule, but also from bad leadership and foreign control. He sold off fancy government cars and told ministers to drive small, cheap cars instead. Sankara lived a modest life. He didn't take a big salary and refused luxury. He started programs to build schools, hospitals, and homes. He gave land to poor farmers and encouraged people to grow their own food. He gave women the right to work, go to school, and join the army. He also banned forced marriages and female genital cutting. He asked people to wear local clothes, eat local food, and believe in themselves instead of copying the West. Sankara also spoke out strongly against foreign debt. He said African countries should not be paying money to former colonizers while their people were suffering. Even though many people loved him, Sankara made some powerful enemies. Some leaders didn't like his tough talk about corruption. Others were unhappy because he did not allow open elections or freedoms for opposition groups. On October 15, 1987, Thomas Sankara was killed in a coup led by his close friend and top officer, Blaise Compaoré. Many believe foreign powers may have supported the coup because Sankara was too independent and challenged global systems. Sankara's rule lasted only 4 years, but his ideas still inspire people in Africa and around the world. He is remembered as Africa's Che Guevara because of his revolutionary spirit, bravery, and love for the people. After the death of Thomas Sankara on October 15, 1987, Captain Blaise Compaoré took over as the leader of Burkina Faso. He had been Sankara's close friend and top military officer, but he led the coup that ended Sankara's life and rule. Blaise Compaoré said he took power because Sankara was dividing the country and causing problems with other nations. Many people, however, believe the coup was done to stop Sankara's bold reforms, which made some powerful people and foreign governments uncomfortable. Compaoré stayed in power for a very long time, from 1987 to 2014. At first, he called his rule the rectification of Sankara's revolution. He changed many of Sankara's policies. For example, he reopened relations with countries and organizations that Sankara had criticized. He allowed more foreign businesses and aid into the country. He removed or weakened some of the programs that helped the poor and protected women's rights. Over time, Compaoré moved from being a military ruler to a civilian president. He won several elections, but many of them were criticized as unfair. Some people accused him of silencing opposition and changing the rules to stay in power longer. During his time, the economy grew in some ways, but many people remained poor, and corruption was a big problem. He was accused of being involved in conflicts in nearby countries like Liberia and Ivory Coast, helping rebel groups and making money from illegal trade. In 2014, Compaoré tried to change the constitution so he could run for president again after already being in power for 27 years. This angered many people. Massive protests broke out across the country. The parliament building was even set on fire. On October 31st, 2014, Compaoré resigned and fled the country. He went into exile in Ivory Coast. His fall was seen as a big victory for the people of Burkina Faso, who said no to a leader trying to rule for life. In later years, he was accused of being involved in Thomas Sankara's death and other crimes, and in 2022, a Burkina court sentenced him to life in prison in absentia for his role in Sankara's assassination. After the long rule of Blaise Compaoré ended in October 2014, Burkina Faso needed a new leader to guide the country through a peaceful transition. The people had just forced the president out through protests, and now they want real democracy. The army first took control, but under pressure from citizens and the international community, a civilian was chosen to lead the country temporarily. That man was Michael Kafando. Michael Kafando was a respected diplomat and former foreign minister. He had also served as Burkina Faso's ambassador to the United Nations. He was known for being calm, wise, and experienced in international affairs. On November 18, 2014, he was officially chosen as transitional president. His job was to lead the country for 1 year until free and fair elections could be held. Kafando worked with Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida, a military officer who had briefly led the country after Compaoré's fall. Together, they formed a transitional government with both civilians and military members. Their main goal were to reform the government, prepare for elections, and keep peace in the country. However, the transition was not easy. In September 2015, just before the elections, a military unit loyal to Compaoré, the Presidential Security Regiment, staged a coup and briefly arrested Kafando and his team. But the people of Burkina Faso rose up again, supported by the regular army and international pressure. After a few days, the coup failed and Kafando was restored as president. On November 29, 2015, peaceful elections were held and a new president was elected. Kafando then stepped down as planned, having successfully guided the country through a difficult time. Roch Kaboré took office in December 2015. At first, many people had high hopes that he would bring stability, development, and peace, but he faced serious problems, especially terrorist attacks. Armed groups started attacking villages, schools, and military posts. Thousands of people were killed or displaced. Many parts of the country became unsafe. Schools closed, people fled their homes, and the army struggled to protect citizens. As attacks increased, many people became unhappy with the government. They felt Kaboré was not doing enough to stop the violence. Despite the problem, Kaboré was re-elected in 2020, showing that many still believe in his leadership. But things kept getting worse, especially in rural areas, where terrorist groups gained control. On January 24, 2022, soldiers staged a coup and removed Kaboré from power. They said he had failed to stop the growing insecurities and protect the people. The army took control and announced that Lieutenant Colonel Damiba would become the new leader. Kaboré was placed under house arrest but was later released. His fall from power marked the return of military rule in Burkina Faso after years of trying to build a stable democracy. Damiba was a senior army officer and had experience in fighting terrorism. He had studied in both Burkina Faso and abroad, including military training in France. Before the coup, he had been in charge of security operations in parts of the country suffering from attacks. He said the army had no choice but to take over because the government had failed to protect the people from terrorist violence. Damiba promised to bring back peace and security. He created a military-led government and said democracy would return later. At first, some people hoped he would succeed where others failed. But the security situation did not improve. In fact, attacks from armed groups continued and even got worse in some areas. People grew frustrated. Many felt that Damiba, like the leaders before him, was not able to stop the violence or help the millions of people affected by the crisis. Just 8 months later, in September 2022, a younger officer, Captain IBRAHIM TRAORE, and his allies removed Damiba from power. They said Damiba had failed to do what he promised, especially in fighting terrorism. At first, Damiba resisted, but he later agreed to step down peacefully to avoid violence. He went into exile in Congo. Traoré was only 34 years old at the time, making him the youngest president in the world. Traoré and other soldiers believed that Damiba had failed to stop the terrorist attacks that were destroying the country. Many people were dying, Villages were being taken over and millions had to leave their homes. Traore promised to act faster and be closer to the people. Since coming to power in September 2022, Captain Ibrahim Traore has made many big changes in Burkina Faso. His main focus has been on fighting terrorism, gaining economic independence, and building stronger ties with African and non-Western partners. Here is what he has done so far. In April 2023, he called for a general mobilization, asking citizens to support the military and defend their communities. He also organized over 50,000 civilian volunteers called the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, who helped the army in protecting towns and villages. He created special army units trained to respond quickly to attacks. These include 25 rapid intervention teams and an elite brigade to handle the worst threats. The army received new weapons, drones, armored vehicles, and engineering tools to fight better in difficult areas. This was all done because many people in Burkina Faso were suffering and had to leave their homes due to terrorism. Traore wanted to show he was serious about making the country safe again. Captain Ibrahim Traore also changed how Burkina Faso works with other countries. In February 2023, he expelled French soldiers and diplomats, accusing France of treating the country like a colony. He then turned to Russia for support. He reopened the Russian embassy in Burkina Faso and welcomed Russian military personnel for protection and cooperation. He signed agreements with Russia, including what with Rosatom, a Russian company that helps with nuclear energy. Some reports also mention possible ties with Wagner, a private Russian military group. Many young people in Burkina Faso saw this as a bold move to make the country more independent and free from foreign control. Captain Ibrahim Traore believed that Burkina Faso must control its own natural resources, especially gold, which is a major source of income. He took back control of the gold industry from foreign companies and demanded that the government have a share in mining profits. He also built the country's first gold refinery, creating jobs and allowing the gold to be processed inside the country instead of abroad. He started agricultural reforms, distributing tractors, pumps, and seeds to farmers and building cotton and tomato factories. He invested in new factories, including a flour mill and cement plant, to reduce reliance on imports and encourage local production. These actions are meant to grow the economy, create jobs, and reduce poverty. Even though he first promised election in 2024, Traore later decided to stay in power longer. In May 2024, after public meetings, he extended the transition period by 5 more years. He also removed his prime minister in December 2024 and took more control of the government. Some media outlets that criticized the government were shut down and some opponents were arrested. This shows that while he wants to fix the country, he is also tightening control over politics and the media. On the other hand, while Traore has promised justice, violence and civilian deaths have increased. In June 2024, over 100 soldiers and 20 civilians were killed in a terrorist attack. In other cases, the army itself has been accused of killing civilians like in the Northern Soro and Kama massacres where hundreds died. Traore said he would investigate some of these events, but human rights groups still worry about the situation. So far so good, it is a mixed record. Some actions for justice, but many unresolved problems. Traore joined with Mali and Niger to form a new group called the Alliance of Sahel States in September 2023. These countries now have no borders between them, allowing free movements of people. They also plan joint military operations to fight terrorism together and support each other politically. This shows a push for African unity, especially among countries that have rejected Western influence. Captain Traore has done a lot in a short time. He is fighting terrorists with a bigger and stronger army, breaking ties with old powers like France, working closely with Russia and African neighbors, taking control of the gold and farming economy, delaying elections and controlling the media, facing human rights concerns especially involving civilian deaths. Many people in Burkina Faso support him because they see him as a bold and courageous leader, but others worry that the country is becoming less democratic and more militarized. The future will show if Traore brings real peace and progress, or if the country will remain under tight military rule for a long time. Thanks for watching. Do well to like, share and comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Turn your notification button on too. Until next time, my name is Thank God and this is SY Times.